Hello and welcome to In Depth. I'm Teena Jha. In recent years, bilateral relations between India and the United States have blossomed into a global strategic partnership that goes beyond just shared democratic values. Regular exchange of high-level political visits has added momentum to this engagement. The wide-ranging dialogue mechanism has established a long-term framework for India-US engagement. However, all these years, the India-US dialogue mechanism has largely been around trade and commerce, while defense and strategic affairs dominated the bilateral landscape. In June 2017, India and the US established the 2+2 ministerial dialogue framework to elevate their strategic consultations. The maiden dialogue was held in New Delhi on the 6th of September 2018 after being postponed twice. Today's In Depth looks at the issues that were discussed during the inaugural 2+2 talks, the agreements that the two countries signed, and some sticking points that still remain in the overall engagement between India and the United States. The 2+2 dialogue between India and the US has been described as an upgrade in ties between both countries. Analysts feel it is an acknowledgement of India's rise as an economic and strategic power because the United States holds such ministerial dialogues only with Australia and Japan and now with India. A 2+2 dialogue refers to a mechanism between two nations where two appointed ministers from each country meet up to discuss their strategic and security interests. The goal is to enhance high-level engagement on bilateral, regional and global issues. India and the United States of America established the 2+2 ministerial dialogue in June 2017 during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Washington, D.C. The formal announcement came in August 2017. The new dialogue format replaced the India-US strategic and commercial dialogue that was a feature during Barack Obama's tenure. The dialogue was an effort to generate sustainable economic growth, create jobs, improve business and investment climate, enhance livelihoods, and sustain the rules-based global order. The new 2+2 mechanism put strategic, defense and security relationship between the two countries at the forefront and center stage. The framework of the talks include External Affairs Minister and Defense Minister from India and their American counterparts, Secretary of State and Defense Secretary. Prior to the US, India had never held a 2+2 dialogue at the ministerial level with any country. Although at the secretarial level, India held similar 2+2 dialogues with other countries like Japan. According to analysts, India was reluctant to agree to a 2+2 format with the US, as it was seen as symbolic of close political military coordination on regional and global issues. But since 2000, deepened dialogue with the US changed the context on a wide range of issues. India's approval of the 2+2 framework of engagement has been preceded by the signing of the Civil Nuclear Cooperation Agreement in 2008, the US declaring India as a major defense partner in 2016, supporting India's membership of NSG and terming India a net security provider in the Indian Ocean and partner in the Indo-Pacific. Announced in August 2017, the 2+2 dialogue was supposed to take place in January 2018. Officially, the inaugural dialogue was slated for April, but it got postponed after the US President fired the then US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. The rescheduled dialogue was to be held on the 6th of July 2018, only to be postponed once again, with the new US Secretary of State directed by President Donald Trump to travel to North Korea instead to follow up on his own meeting with Kim Jong-un. The first edition of the 2+2 talks took place in New Delhi on the 6th of September 2018, wherein, among other things, the two sides signed a landmark security pact, decided to set up hotlines between their defense and foreign ministers, and deliberated on thorny issues such as India's purchase of S-400 missiles from Russia and import of crude oil from Iran. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. In the first 2+2 dialogue between the US and India, both countries discussed key issues and also signed the landmark COMCASA agreement that gives India access to encrypted American technologies. While the Indo-Pacific region occupied the bulk of the discussions, the two countries also agreed on working together towards the entry of India in the nuclear suppliers group.
The first 2+2 dialogue between India and the US was marked by greater convergence on strategic and security issues. Recognizing that India and US are strategic partners, major and independent stakeholders in world affairs, the two sides committed to work together on regional and global issues, including in bilateral, trilateral and quadrilateral formats. They further decided to establish secure communication between the Minister of External Affairs of India and the US Secretary of State and between the Minister of Defense of India and the US Secretary of Defense to help maintain regular high-level communication on emerging developments.
मित्रों, 2+2 वार्ता के दौरान हम चारों मंत्रियों ने भारत प्रशांत क्षेत्र के विषय पर हमारे देशों के बीच विचारों और हितों की बढ़ती समानता देखी। इस संकल्पना के पीछे जो सिद्धांत है उसे हमारे राजनेताओं द्वारा पहले ही रेखांकित किया जा चुका है।
President Trump recognizes the long-term strategic importance of India's economy playing a productive role in the world's most dynamic and fastest-growing region. He is intent on ensuring the United States, India, and all countries can responsibly reap the benefits of an Indo-Pacific that is open, free, with fair trade and investment.
Strengthening strategic cooperation, India and the US signed the landmarked Security Pact, Communications Compatibility and Security Agreement or COMCASA. COMCASA paves the way for transfer of communication security equipment from the US to India that will facilitate interoperability between the forces and potentially with other militaries that use US origin systems for secured data links. COMCASA is an India-specific version of Communication and Information on Security Memorandum of Agreement. It comes into force immediately and is valid for a period of 10 years. COMCASA allows India to procure transfer specialized equipment for encrypted communications for US origin military platforms like C-17, C-130 and P-8Is. Both countries will implement this agreement in a manner that is consistent with the national security interest of the other. COMCASA is one of the 3 required defense agreements that must be signed by a nation before becoming eligible to obtain high-tech military hardware from the Pentagon. India has signed one of them, the Logistic Exchange Memorandum of Agreement, in 2016. The two countries have not yet started dialogue on the remaining agreement, the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement for Geospatial Cooperation.
Defense cooperation has emerged as the most significant dimension of our strategic partnership and as a key driver of our overall bilateral relationship. The momentum in our defense partnership has imbued a tremendous positive energy that has elevated India-US relations to unprecedented heights.
We will continue working together to enhance and expand India's role as a primary major defense partner to elevate our relationship to a level commensurate with our closest allies and partners. Today, we took, as you know, a significant step towards that goal by signing the Communications Compatibility and Security Agreement.
The ministers reaffirmed the strategic importance of India's designation as a major defense partner of the United States and committed to expand the scope of India's MDP status. To keep an eye on Chinese submarines and ships, both sides reviewed the growth of bilateral engagements in support of maritime security and maritime domain awareness. They also committed to start exchanges between the US Naval Forces, Central Command, and the Indian Navy, underscoring the importance of deepening their maritime cooperation in the Western Indian Ocean. All 4 ministers, including Swaraj, Sitaraman, Mattis and Pompeo, welcomed the inclusion of India by the United States among the top tier of countries enlightened to license-free exports, re-exports and transfers under license exception strategic trade authorization, and also committed to explore other means to support further expansion in two-way trade in defense items and defense manufacturing supply. On cross-border terrorism, both sides agree to deepen ties in the international forums like the United Nations and the Financial Action Task Force for counter-terrorism cooperation. They discussed ongoing efforts by India and the US in promoting an Afghan-led, Afghan-owned and Afghan government-controlled reconciliation process that brings together all ethnic groups and political formation in the country. They also termed rapidly growing trade and investment ties as an important element of bilateral relationship. India's bid for membership of the Nuclear Suppliers Group was also discussed in the meeting. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
In one of the biggest political engagement between India and the United States so far, both countries expressed unanimity against the cross-border terrorism emanating from Pakistan. The two sides also expressed support for an Afghan-led, Afghan-owned peace and reconciliation process.
On September 6, 2018, India held the first edition of 2+2 talks with the United States. From India's side, External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj, Defense Minister Nirmala Sitharaman held the talks with US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Defense Secretary James Mattis in New Delhi. One of the key issues that found resonance during the talks was cross-border terrorism. Addressing a joint press conference, External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj said, "The Indo-US Counter-Terrorism Corporation has acquired a new qualitative edge and purpose." Welcoming the recent US move to designate 3 Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Taiba terrorists and terror financiers as specially designated global terrorists, Swaraj said this listing is based on terrorism that is flourishing in Pakistan, which has equally affected India, the US and the world. Swaraj also called on Pakistan to ensure that their territory was not used to launch terrorist attacks on other countries.
तो आतंकवाद का मुकाबला करने के लिए हमारा सहयोग गुणात्मक दृष्टि से आगे बढ़ा है। पिछले वर्ष संपन्न हुए टेररिस्ट डेजिग्नेशंस डायलॉग और आतंकवाद का मुकाबला तथा आंतरिक सुरक्षा में सहयोग को बढ़ावा देने के लिए अन्य तंत्रों के महत्व को हमने स्वीकार किया है। संयुक्त राष्ट्र और फाइनेंशियल एक्शन टास्क फोर्स जैसे अंतर्राष्ट्रीय मंचों में अपने सहयोग को और ज़्यादा गहन बनाने पर भी हमने सहमति व्यक्त की है। अमेरिका द्वारा हाल ही में की गई लश्कर-ए-तैयबा से संबंधित आतंकवादियों की नामजदगी का हम स्वागत करते हैं। ये नामजदगी पाकिस्तान से चलाए जा रहे आतंकवाद, जिसने भारत और अमेरिका को समान रूप से प्रभावित किया है, के खतरे के संबंध में अंतर्राष्ट्रीय समुदाय को संबोधित करती है।
The US also agreed to exert more pressure on Pakistan to rein in various terror outfits operating from its soil and dismantle their network. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo pitched for elevating the security cooperation.
We also discussed a number of pressing regional and global issues, including Afghanistan and North Korea, and how our two countries can work together more closely to address each of those. We also committed to deepen our already strong counterterrorism cooperation.
Defense Minister Nirmala Sitharaman in her remarks said India and US were committed to work together to combat the persistent threat of terrorism and other shared security challenges. Both sides agreed to deepen cooperation in international forums like the United Nations and the Financial Action Task Force.
We reaffirmed our intention to cooperate in every possible way to ensure peace and stability, as well as to realize the aspirations of our peoples. We will also work together to combat the persisting threat of terrorism and other shared security challenges. In our discussions, we explored the instrumentalities necessary to deliver on those shared objectives.
At the dialogue, the United States also agreed to take action against Dawood Ibrahim, the mastermind of the Mumbai blast. A pact was signed between India and US to track the underworld don who is believed to be hiding in Pakistan. The US shared India's concern that Pakistan continues to allow Mumbai attack mastermind and Jamaat-ud-Dawa chief Hafiz Saeed roam free despite the reward the US has placed on his head for his role in terror activities. The agreement between India and the US assumes significance as JUD led by Saeed was declared as a foreign terrorist organization by the US in June 2014. Saeed also carries a 10 million USD American reward on his head for his role in terror activities. The JUD is a front for the LAT that carried out the deadly 2008 Mumbai attack.
26/11 को हुए हमले की 10वीं वर्षगांठ पर हमने इस आतंकवादी हमले के पीछे के मास्टरमाइंड्स के लिए न्याय और दंड के महत्व को स्वीकार किया है। हमने दक्षिण एशिया के वर्तमान हालात पर भी विस्तार से चर्चा की है। भारत राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप की अफगान नीति का समर्थन करता है। सीमा पर आतंकवाद को समर्थन देने संबंधी पाकिस्तान की नीति को समाप्त करने और दक्षिण एशियाई क्षेत्र में इसे एक राष्ट्रीय नीति के रूप में इस्तेमाल करने पर लगाम लगाने संबंधी उनका आह्वान हमारे विचारों से मेल खाता है।
During the 2+2 India-US dialogue, the two sides concluded the elimination of terrorism was crucial for global peace and stability. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
In the first round of 2+2 talks, there were a few issues on which there is no clarity. These include oil imports from Iran, the H-1B visa issue, and India's ties with Russia. Let's try and understand what discussions took place on some of these issues. The United States has agreed to explore a mutually agreeable solution on the issue of purchase of Iranian oil by India. The US has given a November deadline for countries to halt oil imports from Iran. The US has said countries need to reduce the import of oil from Iran to zero after the sanctions begin on November 4th. But New Delhi maintains that that is not a viable proposition for the country since Iran is a key partner for India. Saying that the US did not want to penalize a great strategic partner like India, the US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said the US would work with India on this issue.
That's how India can further work with the United States to achieve the final fully verifiable denuclearization of North Korea. And we should explore ways to partner on holding this outlawed regime in Iran responsible for all of its malign activity. Together, our nations can achieve our shared vision of prosperity and security as we build a relationship that will help shape the 21st century. Thank you, Madam.
Iran is the third largest oil supply to India. Now the point which comes is that all of a sudden on 4th November, because that since America has come out of the nuclear deal, and after 4th November you cannot import any oil from Iran as far as that card size is concerned. So we are trying to bring out, we agree on the one issue that Iran should not go nuclear, but he has got all the right to use nuclear energy for peaceful reason.
Another contentious issue is India's purchase of S-400 anti-aircraft missile defense systems from Russia. The US said it will work with India on this as the purchase violates sanctions under the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act instituted by the US Congress on arms purchases from Russia. There is a possibility of a presidential waiver in the act. However, no decision has been taken on this yet.
This S-4 Triumph, which is air defense missile system, it is very important. This is the best weapon system available in the world market today. The only one which is very close or which can be compared is THAAD, which is Tammany High Altitude Area Defense System, which Americans have deployed in South Korea and Guam. However, as far as S-400 is concerned, Triumph, it is far, far superior than this. The reasons are this, that the range of this is about 400 kilometers. It can, multiple targets can be engaged by that. It can detect, then track and then shoot. And the stealth, technology of F-35, which was there, this can beat that. And for an area like NCR, one regiment is required.
During the talks, India also urged the US to take a balanced and sensitive view on the issue of proposed changes in America's H-1B visa policy. External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj said the proposed changes will affect people-to-people links that are crucial for energizing bilateral ties.
मैंने H-1B वीज़ा व्यवस्था में प्रस्तावित बदलाव के मुद्दे पर एक संतुलित और संवेदनशील दृष्टिकोण अपनाने के लिए सेक्रेटरी पोम्पियो से अनुरोध किया है, क्योंकि इस प्रकार के फेरबदल से हमारे नवोन्मेष और लोगों के बीच आपसी आदान प्रदान पर बहुत दुष्प्रभाव पड़ेगा, जो हमारे संबंधों को ऊर्जावान बनाने का एक महत्वपूर्ण माध्यम है। और मैंने सेक्रेटरी पोम्पियो से कहा है कि राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप और प्रधानमंत्री मोदी जी के बीच में जो मित्रता है, उसका लेकर भारत के लोगों को लगता है कि अमेरिका उनके हितों के खिलाफ कोई काम नहीं करेगा। मैंने कहा है उनको कि भारत के लोगों के इस विश्वास को वो बनाए रखें।
The H-1B visa is a non-immigrant visa that allows US companies to employ foreign workers in specialty occupations that require theoretical or technical expertise. The Trump administration wants changes in the H-1B system, saying some IT companies were abusing the US work visas to deny jobs to American workers. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
While both India and the US have covered a lot of ground in their bilateral equation, some sticking points still remain. Let's look at a few of them in this report.
While India and the US have covered a lot of ground in their bilateral relationship in recent years, there do exist many differences between them. According to diplomatic experts, the strategy on Afghanistan could be one of them. While the US is open to holding direct talks with the Taliban, India is cautious on this front. It will definitely not want talks with groups that it believes are backed by Pakistan. Also, since India is one of the biggest aid donors to Afghanistan, it wants its say on the peace process in the country. Trade is also an issue that has some outstanding issues. Earlier this year, the US increased tariffs on steel and aluminium. India retaliated and raised import duties on a number of products imported from the US. Two-way trade between the two countries crossed $100 billion in 2016. The US realizes the need to strengthen ties with India, which is why observers feel the US downplayed its concerns over New Delhi's trade ties with countries like Russia and Iran. But there remain points of friction, particularly on economic issues, that could ultimately limit the deeper cooperation envisioned by US strategy. India has a large trade surplus with the US, a particular bone of contention for President Donald Trump.
Defining aspect of Indo-US relationship for quite some time. So when we said that the strategic logic of the relationship is what has been driving this relationship forward over the last few decades, it has been the fact that this balance of power is changing in the Indo-Pacific, and how do you make a balance of power conducive to Indian interests and to American interests. And I think that is something that both Washington and Delhi have been trying to push forth. This logic only goes so far in terms of making the case, because we and Americans have been making this case for the last 2 decades. There is an administration now in Washington that wants a bit of a give and take. They want a transactionalist approach. So what is it that we are willing to give, and what is it that we want on a priority basis to take from them? And I think that's going to be the essence of the dialogue going forward.
For its part, observers say that the US is still unclear about what it can get India to do against China, and if India will fall in completely with its plans to challenge China strategically. Delivering the keynote address at the 17th Shangri-La Dialogue, Prime Minister Modi praised India-China cooperation, saying it is good for the world's future.
China is concerned that what we were talking about, Indo-Pacific, it is very important. As far as India is concerned, we should recalibrate our relationship both with China, Russia and America. We should be in such a manner that we should have our own one-to-one relation, but not at the cost of one to the another. We have to be very realistic. We, as far as China is concerned, are competitor in Indo-Pacific, but when it comes to economic takeoff, we are not competitor, but we are collaborating. Therefore, our relationship with Russia, China and America must be realistic, not one at the cost of other.
Modi also called bilateral ties with China layered, while stating that Asia and the world will have a better future if India and China work together with trust and confidence, keeping in mind each other's interests. All of which indicates that India has different plans about its engagements with China as opposed to what the US probably wants. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And that's it from us in today's edition of In Depth. We'll be back same time on Monday now with a comprehensive view on some other subject. You can also watch our episodes online on YouTube and Twitter and get back to us with your feedback and suggestions. Thanks for your time.